Evening, everyone, and welcome to November 4th, Pullman Police Advisory Committee. I am Stephanie Rink, the chair of the committee. We will start off with our tenets and roll call. If we can start in the corner with Joe.
I'm sorry, I was distracted. Introductions?
Yes.
Joe Thornton, I work for the Pullman School District. I'm the school district representative on this committee.
Isabella Macon, Pullman High School representative.
David Macon, representative for the multicultural.
Nathan Dean, Pullman School District parent.
Gwendolyn Rink, the alternate Pullman High School rep.
Angela Center, WSU faculty staff.
Stephanie Rink, chair, also Pullman School District parent.
Eric Pitzoff, business community.
Phyllis Dahlkop, Sunnyside Hill representative.
Barbara Hammond, College Hill representative.
Jake Opgenorth, operations commander, Pullman Police Department.
Darby Baldwin, police administrative assistant.
Elizabeth OJ, code enforcement officer for Pullman PD.
J.S. Kumar, Military Hill representative.
Philip Lutchenko, Military Hill Alternative representative.
Wonderful, thank you. We'll move on to approval of minutes. I'm sure everybody is well versed and you've read all that. Do we have any comments, questions, concerns, edits? Do we have a motion to approve?
I will make a motion to approve.
Second. All those in favor to approve? Aye. Any opposed? Wonderful. Moving on. We have a membership application from Ms. Krista Gross. Krista, would you mind giving us a few moments of your time and telling us what you are excited about joining the committee?
Sure. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, good. A few years ago, I found myself with our kids grown up, and I wasn't as stingy with my evenings and weekends, so I decided to become a realtor. So I'm a realtor at RE/MAX. I love my job, but my one big concern that almost made me not apply or try to get licensed was safety. I watched too many Datelines in 48 hours where it says, 46-year-old realtor found dead, So before I even opened up a book to study, I got online and found, charms that you can hit to alert 911, some people that you have on your notification list. But golly, if you're hitting that button, it's already too late, right? So I'm really big on having a buddy system, having my husband there for showings, making strong boundaries for when clients reach out to me and they want to have showings. I want to have business, but I also want to go home at the end of the day. And I also want my colleagues to go home to their families. So I got involved in the Beverly Carter Foundation. Beverly Carter was a realtor in Little Rock, Arkansas, and she went to help these lovely people who ended up murdering her and pretty much taking everything. I mean, even when the police raided their home, they found Beverly's shirts in the woman's closet. They'd taken her jewelry, they'd taken everything. Anyhow, so her son is like, I am not going to let my mom's death be in vain. So he started the Beverly Carter Foundation. It's on realtor safety. I applied. I'm now a board member of that organization. And Wednesday, I'm going to San Francisco to the National Association of Realtors Conference to work the booth there to tell other agents, there are way more important things than money. It's, safety. So then I had a client tell me about this group, and I didn't know it existed. So I went online, watched some of your meetings, and I thought, golly, I can really gain a lot from this group. And hopefully then I can also let you know some of our concerns in our community too. So it seemed like such a good group. I was telling Stephanie professional, but yet it looks like you all have fun, and I love the high school student participation. So I'm really honored that you're considering me. Yeah. Any questions for me? Whoever thought realtors would have a safety concern, right? They just don't think about it, right? Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay, so we're going to ask you just to step out for a few minutes. We will stop recording and we're going to discuss, and then we'll bring you right back in. So don't go anywhere.
Thank you.
don't know if that, we got that,
He
but.
should have got it.
We didn't get the 2 thumbs, I mean, that's.
I know, start. Krista, welcome to our committee.
So you're welcome to have a seat wherever you would.
Anywhere?
Yep.
Anywhere, yes.
Yes. You'll be so official.
So thank you very much for your service on our committee. We are very welcoming, and we look forward to hearing all about the real estate here and how we can maybe lower the prices. So just work on that for us. Okay, we'll do it.
My job is to raise the prices, so I don't know if that's gonna happen.
Competing interest here. Okay, next up, we have our code enforcement discussion with Officer OJ.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, I guess since I've been to the last meeting where there's been a lot of new members, so I just want to familiarize people with what we do in code enforcement. Our job is continually growing. So in the past, we started out with mainly being parking and animal control. Since the nuisance ordinance was adopted, that has taken over the majority of our work. And so that includes things like accumulation of garbage, junk, litter, sidewalk obstructions. There's just, graffiti, just anything you can imagine that would affect, property values, sanitation, public safety. So those are the reasons for having the nuisance ordinance, is to obviously keep our property values high and to make our communities more lovable and livable. More recently, we've taken over things like garbage can placement, and I don't really know how prevalent that problem is in your neighborhoods, but there are neighborhoods where it's pretty consistent, where they just live out on the street. They create a parking hazard, they get knocked over, they block the sidewalk. So we've taken that on. The other thing that we are currently doing is, as of last year, we took over sidewalk snow removal enforcement, which is a huge job. We're really trying to push advertising that topic in many new ways to different community groups. And we're having to use our imagination on how to get the word out and how to do it ahead of time, because if we get behind the curve of the snow, then the ice is there for who knows how long. And so we're trying to get ahead of that problem this year. We are also dealing now with sight distance obstructions, which would be like vegetation at intersections. These are things that are typically have been handled by other city departments, and resolution takes a little bit longer than, say, if we were to show up and try to get some resolution. So we're trying to look at areas where we can speed up the process of neighborhood complaints, I guess. So garbage cans, site distance, we're gonna be starting on over occupancy in our residential districts. This year, we're gonna take an educational stance on that. We would basically field complaints and educate whoever's involved with the property, the renter, property manager, owner, advise them that in the following year, complaints that are received, we're going to take enforcement action. We're still kind of trying to figure out how that's gonna look, because part of that still is under the planning and zoning department. So we try to do things as fast as we can and get resolution as fast as we can. And some of the codes and the enforcement mechanisms that are written that we've taken over aren't the most friendly for how we do things, but we're looking at ways to get those things restructured so that we can, work on things quickly. So that's kind of where we're at. Really, I look at us as we try to maintain safety and orderliness in the area of parking and garbage and just junk accumulation, things that will make your lives better as a homeowner or a neighbor. So those are the things that I think that our code enforcement officers have to offer you. And we're only going to grow in our responsibilities, I think, as things come up where we actually look at and see that we are actually able to handle those complaints from start to finish. So if you guys have any concerns or anything, complaints, you can get a hold of us, yeah.
Well, you might imagine, living on College Hill as I do, that all of those things you mentioned impact my neighborhood. And one question I have, and maybe I should have educated myself to know this, but in fact I don't. For snow removal,
Yeah.
are the owners of rental properties, are the managers responsible, or are the renters? Because I find it unlikely that students bring shovels.
So the cool thing is, we've had to look at that requirement and figure out which codes we can use to enforce it. Originally, it's under, there's Chapter 11, and it has to deal with, you know, the property owner is responsible for the adjacent sidewalk and clearance. But that also says like 8 hours after the last accumulation of snow. So that could have a huge range of, you know, enforcement repercussions for us. And, you know, not everyone, we understand that not everyone's available right now when it's snowing, but at the same time, there are times we need to go move faster or get resolution because it's a safety issue.
Right.
So we can use the nuisance ordinance. There's a specific code in the nuisance ordinance that would allow us to hold the renter, owner, control over property, anyone really who's attached to that property responsible, and we could issue a ticket if we wanted, you know, right away for a sidewalk obstruction that's causing a safety hazard. So we have to be creative in how we can use the codes that we have to enforce that, but there are, you know, ways that we can use discretion and use different codes to get resolution faster, you know, or apply depending on the safety factor that's there. Hopefully we can get it to where it's just, we're trying to get people to be proactive and be thinking about, oh, I gotta get a shovel before everyone else goes and buys all the shovels and now there's not one, you know, so hopefully we can head off some of this stuff by getting the word out. But of course, there are just people who don't ever know, or they don't want to do anything about it, and so, you know.
Right.
all
So
that
do
happens.
you know who property owners are of all the rentals? I mean,
I'm gonna say probably not all, but we have a huge, we have a rental registration system that we can use to access people who are currently registered, and that would help us determine, okay, who's in control of the property. For the nuisance ordinance, like the renter, the owner, or the person in control of the property can be held responsible for certain violations. Typically, I like to go with the people who are in the house first. If I can't get resolution that way, we would go up the scale. But there are other things like Tax Sifter online where we can go and say, okay, we don't have a rental registration here. Who is the owner? This is abandoned. It's not. No one's here. So we have other resources that we can use to find, and then we have other city departments who can share information on, you know, deed holders and things like that. So I mean, we have to be creative and figure out who has the information we need, and get that.
Thank
and
you.
some of it just comes with, we've contacted, like an officer may have contacted someone else before at that residence, and so we have something to go off of. So we do have more resources than other city departments for stuff like that, for more current, you know, occupants and stuff.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you talk about sight lines for
Yes.
driving, and you talked about vegetation, but just recently driving to the high school up State Street, that you stop, but in order to continue to go and look both ways, you're almost in the middle of the road anyways, because you can't see.
So
the
State
oncoming.
Street at,
The two stop signs, like,
True Street?
I don't know what they are.
Hall.
Yeah, maybe. So like you're heading up past the Grange or, well, whatever that is called now.
Oh, so the,
okay, so you're on State, and is it the high school, or is it the,
No, it's just the
first one's Harrison, the second one's True.
Harrison and
Yeah.
So when you stop there, the other vehicles don't have a stop sign, and so you're trying to wait to make sure that you're not going to get hit, but you can't see, and so by the time that you can actually see, you're halfway in the
so
intersection anyways.
what's the obstruction there? Like, is it?
It's, well, there's either
bushes and
parked
stuff?
cars, or it's, there's one where it's like a cement,
Okay.
don't know what
So-
it's called, retaining wall, yeah.
That would just take looking at, because I believe you have to have it clear from like the bottom of the curb, 3 feet up. They can have stuff in that area, and then from 3 to I think 9 feet has to be clear, and that's 30 feet back from the intersection. And actually that grows a little bit more if there's a stop sign or not. So I'd have to go out and take a look and see how tall is that retaining wall, like, and I know if it's for a giant tree, then the city's stance in the past has been to, clean up the limit up, but not necessarily remove the tree. So a lot of those just take collaboration with other city departments to determine what has to be done, if it's not just a brush like issue that can be cleanly or quickly turned back. So I could go and take a look at the area and see.
Because I know the True Street one, it's just cars park on the side, and when the cars are clean, you have wonderful ass view, but when there's all parked up, it's like.
So on something like that.
Retaining wall heading south on State, if you stop at True and looking to the right, to the west, there's the retaining wall there.
That you can't see.
Yeah, it's almost impossible until you are creeping out. I don't know how they can get rid of the whole retaining wall.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, we'll have to look at it.
It's been there forever.
But the parking issue, we would handle that by, you have to leave 20 feet clear on each side of a crosswalk. And so that would actually be a crosswalk ticket because crosswalks are present no matter whether they're marked or unmarked. And so we would probably do a ticketing enforcement education type campaign there.
And you said they're present, and so regardless of whether they're painted, is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, if it's an intersection, there is legally a crosswalk there,
okay.
and you have to leave it clear. And I mean, obviously, people aren't going to be like, oh, if there's no crosswalk, then I could see how many people would make that mistake. But the reason is you have to have that 20 feet clear so that pedestrians, that people can see pedestrians entering the road and that kind of stuff. So we have to be creative in our ticketing, like how can we get the effect with what kind of way we can enforce. So, yeah.
So is there a way to get information to you in terms like graffiti? So just one of those things I kind of take note of as I drive around. Is there a way that we can almost tweet, right? Like
I don't know about tweet. You could probably post it on our, and Darby would get it on our Facebook page.
Yeah, this is one of the things that Gary and I've been chatting about is trying to figure out what's a more efficient way of getting information as people are out and we see those things. And so there's like a graffiti on the way to the high school. There's one on the guardrail that I just noticed you showed up maybe a week or two ago within that. There's a couple other ones on college as you're coming up, and so that's a really big one on a retaining wall, right? So we notice, so that guy said we can figure out if there's an efficient way of
There's
getting
an
those to
online complaint from the city website. I have never had to complain on that myself. I just am on the receiving end of that, so I don't know how friendly that is as far as like, is it quick, is it the fastest way? But we receive code violation complaints that way all the time. It's just best that those things are left to be non-time sensitive requests, because if it's a parking issue and there's no one on, then it might wait for 3 days and then it's gone. So we receive complaints like for that all the time on the online nuisance. What happens is it comes as an email to our records department, then they actually call it into dispatch. So it's almost like it's quite live as far as that goes. And so, but if it's a parking problem, then you never know that might be something that they would then hold for a code enforcement officer or something. So if you really want results, then you could call.
Another option would be the MyPD app, because you can submit things through that. So that would be another option, like if you're out somewhere and saw something and wanted to send it right then. So.
Okay.
You can always call dispatch too, the non-emergency dispatch. Some people just aren't into that. Some people like the nuisance submission online. Whatever you find is easiest for you, we'll basically get the call the same way and go kind of prioritize calls, of course, like based on what's more time sensitive, and then get to the other kind. Code violations can sometimes take a little time to resolve, so we would just basically prioritize the calls as they come in.
So another question I wonder is, thinking about it, so you have to get creative with a lot of these. Is there any intention of the department re-examining like a community court to help enlist some assistance in trying to get creative in how, the idea is a problem-solving court is to really solve these types of issues. So if they don't have a shovel, and we can get you a shovel, right? There's a lot of, so this idea, and I know the chief and I talked about maybe 3 years ago, we tried to put a grant together, but given how Pullman is growing really fast and your role is taking on a lot more, we can think about how we get more creative in problem solving.
I think that's a great idea. I think from what I've seen over last year, most of the time, we've ran into a couple cases where it was people with injuries who couldn't, or people had just had a baby, or we had like maybe one elderly person who can't get it done, so it'd be lovely to have someone to refer them to, because sometimes it feels kind of heartless to say, all right, well, you can pay for so-and-so to come out here and do it. Like, it'd be nice to have some kind of a community, like, volunteer corps to do some stuff like that. So I think that that's not bad. There is it's called a Helping Hands. I think it's like it's just a group that gets together twice a year and they volunteer and help clean up yards for people who aren't able to do it and stuff, but that's like long-term scheduled out. So that's not really the solution for winter. But those would be the people, like for code violations, if they can't do the work themselves, I might refer them to them, and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, there really isn't a good, aside from just saying, oh, look in your newspaper or look online for someone who will come do it, contract with you, and actually a lot of those people are busy, so they're not looking to take on more work, or they're already got their schedules full. So there's a need for, like, even if the civic engagement could get something like that for winter, for snow shoveling, like that would be, they're always looking for things to do, I think, to be volunteers and stuff, so I don't.
Then we're always looking for student conduct always have community service hours they have to fill. And I'm just saying, having looked over those, that's a great way. That's community service in action.
Yeah. And it serves several people walking through and the people who live there, so two birds with one stone. But I mean, that would be, is it something that you would want to sit down with us, you specifically, or are you just saying?
It sounds like it. Sounds like he wants to chair that committee.
It's about problem solving. So, I mean, ultimately, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I already work with the department a lot anyway, so it's just another.
It is hard to have that conversation with people where I'm like, I don't know how you're gonna get done, but you gotta get done. Like, so it would be nice to have an answer to that, you know, for some people who they just cannot do it themselves.
And the challenge sometimes is distinguishing those people who can't do it, those people who simply don't want to but can, because it's the people who can't that really, really need the help. They, versus other people, well, they just need some motivation.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, we only started doing the snow part in particular last year, and I can only imagine we're gonna find more, I think, need as time goes on, because we'll be working it harder, I guess. It'll be more on the forefront, so I accept whatever you're offering. We'll see about it later.
So then are you also, I assume then, you don't deal with WSU snow sidewalks, that's WSU, right?
Right,
Yeah.
so I would deal anything that's off of, like, in the City Pullman Police Department's jurisdiction,
Okay,
so.
right, yeah. One other question, do you deal with sidewalks that are obstructed by vegetation?
Yep.
You do that, okay.
We do that now. Yeah, and that one's not so hard. I mean, we usually are looking for the property owner manager to get that done, and sometimes it's done that day, and sometimes it's maybe a week, but we can usually get a pretty good turnaround on something like that. If it's one branch, we'll try to do it ourselves, as long as we're not gonna hurt anyone's beloved trees or, stuff like that. Do you guys have any questions about animal control? We chase dogs and all kinds of stuff. So we do all kinds of things, and we're running around all the time doing different stuff in the community. So.
Do you ever catch the fox?
We've seen the fox on game cams, but we've never caught the fox for real.
Are you trying to catch the fox?
No.
Where is the fox?
Have you caught the coyotes?
We don't. We let coyotes do what they do until they start exhibiting abnormal behavior, which would be anything other than cautious around humans. And we haven't had a ton that I would consider abnormally aggressive towards humans or anything. But we do field calls like that a lot. Most of the time we're responding to make sure if it's in a school area that they're gone, or just to be a presence. But a lot of times we're taking into account how they were described to us, what they're doing, and we would make a decision whether or not like something needs to happen with a particular coyote. But typically they're left to do what they need to do or what they do unless they start, you know, there's a point where they can become nuisances, right, at a particular residence or dangerous. So those would be the ways that we would step in if we can. But they clean up a lot of roadkill that I don't have to clean up. So. That's not a bad thing either.
Back to the fox. Where is the fox? I haven't heard about the
We
fox.
have fox. I believe they're more located over towards the high school. But yeah.
I had someone who saw one over on Sunnyside Hill quite recently.
Do what now?
I said, I know someone who saw one over on Sunnyside Hill quite recently.
Okay.
We see them at Pioneer.
And they probably just...
It's not one, right? Like, you just, the cat population is a lot lower, I've noticed. We don't see a lot. We used to see a lot.
I haven't surveyed the cat population recently, so I'm not sure.
Well, coyotes and foxes have to eat too.
Yeah, I mean, we would just for any wildlife really, like we would just, you know, determine, are they a hazard? Are they actually, you know, what were the circumstances between a person and an animal or whatever was going on, and we would kind of go from there. So.
Do you have a lot of calls of people not understanding that we live surrounded by wheat fields and we're going to get coyotes in the area?
We get people calling us and telling us that they're across the road. I just think people don't really know what it's like, and maybe they're worried about the animal. I don't know, but we field those calls. And if there's a humane issue that we can get involved in, we will try. But otherwise, it's kind of like enjoy the view.
A couple of years ago, a man showed up at the station with a buck in his back seat.
With a what?
A buck in his back seat.
Yeah.
I kid you not.
And it wasn't a big car.
No, it was a small car.
We probably have pictures of that somewhere.
Yes, we do.
A dead one?
No,
It
but
was
very much alive.
it was
on the back
probably
seat.
diseased
Okay.
because he was able to handle it and put it in
I
the
know.
car, and it was just like
Nice.
pressed up against the window. So
That's not normal.
I don't know, but we get some weird stuff. We get some weird stuff.
Like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Anybody want to know about the cougar that was spotted in the
Yeah, I was just about to ask about the cougar. Yeah, last year there was I heard reports of a cougar on around Military Hill.
Yeah, we had a couple officers say that they did lay eyes on it. But I didn't lay my eyes on it, so I don't know. Yeah. And I think at that point, had it kept on cropping up, then we would have had our Fish and Wildlife Department get involved. But at that point, we had put up game cams and everything in certain areas to see if we could get a view. And I remember going out there a lot, searching for it. You know, sometimes they're resolved, they'll pass through. And sometimes if they remain, then we have to determine whether or not they're trying to stay. So at that point, with the kids being in that area, and there's a huge, like a trail that kids use that I believe it was frequenting that area, we would have probably definitely got the Fish and Wildlife Department involved to do some type of removal. We're always prepared, and the things that we would bring them on are like moose that don't leave town, or bear, or cougar. For the most part, everything else is considered like nuisance wildlife. So there's only so much that they get involved with here.
So going back to the snow removal, because obviously for the school district, those routes that we've identified as walking routes for students to school are huge. And obviously last February, it kicked everybody's tail. Well, what's the ordinance say? How many hours after class?
It's 8 daylight hours after the last snowfall. So I mean, if it snowed at 3 a.m., daylight comes 8 hours, and then you have to have
But
it
if it
cleaned
snows
up.
again that night, it's kind of a reset.
Yeah.
Okay, so last February, basically, didn't need to get your snow removed
Yeah.
until the second week of March.
Yeah, we had a hard time with that, but we can see which ones are. There's an inconvenience, like, and then it becomes like a safety issue and stuff. So.
And then the other issue for us is the people who elect not to shovel their driveway or shovel a parking spot and now they just started parking in the road, and now we're trying to get a school bus through there. What's the best recourse for that, other than just, we could easily push it out of the road with the school bus.
You don't want to do that. You'd probably have to try to call us and just report what's going on. We can try to troubleshoot the area with them. There's a lot of different things going on with, like, people will shovel their sidewalk and then the snow berm gets pushed back up onto the sidewalk, and there's a lot of frustration with that, or getting their driveways plowed shut. And so there's just a lot of different moving parts to the whole snow issue. And so for that situation, I would just say, give us a call. We'll go talk to the driver. Like, I mean, if they need help, we'll try to, I mean, I have access to city people who might be able to kind of break a berm so they could have a little room to get in, or just, I mean, we just have to try to see what resources we could use to get that clear, because we don't want traffic obstructions. That would definitely be something that we would try to act on immediately. Like, let's figure out how to fix this one area. And that's just kind of a case-by-case basis. Some roads are wide enough to have a little wiggle room on each side, and some are not. And I can give you some information on how to get that information to us.
Okay. And I know part of the problem is we have a subset of the population who comes over here unprepared to deal with snow, whether it's knowing how to drive the snow or not having the right vehicle for the snow, and then they just leave their car where it stopped moving, and then they kind of go, because that's what they do in Seattle. And everyone seems okay with that. So.
Yeah, I had to dig a few of those out this year up on campus, so they don't think ahead, I think, and then it's even when they try to get it out, it's like it's too late. Like, oh, I can't even get it out now. So a lot of that is we're just trying to educate them on, not leaving it long term. Don't store your vehicle long term. There's a 4-day parking rule. Hopefully that would help, the flow of traffic and the flow of being able to get the streets cleaned if there aren't long-term storage issues. And the city departments have I guess it's the maintenance crew, road maintenance crew, they have a system of notifying us of what cars are causing issues with them getting plows where they need to go. That's still kind of working out. Usually we'll get like a list of like 30 cars in one day, and we're like, oh. So we are trying to be proactive as far as some of those routes and making sure that we are keeping an eye on streets that might be having long-term storage issues for cars before snow comes, so that we don't have such a backlog of actually true abandoned vehicles versus cars that are just parked for, a week at a time. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Do you talk about identifying the routes? Do you have a map of what those walking routes are?
Yeah, I wrote that down. I'd love to have that.
Yeah, we do have those.
Is it like on the school?
Every
website?
school has it posted on their site.
On their site,
Yeah.
okay.
And it's really for established walking routes for the elementaries, because those are truly neighborhood schools.
Okay.
Not so much for the high school and middle school.
Okay.
Working under the assumption that they're intelligent enough and safe enough to identify a safe route. But for the elementary kids, we have routes established.
Okay.
Any other questions? No? Well, thank you very much for that very informative presentation. And I will look for any other comments on that State Street thing.
Okay.
Maybe a 4-way stop. Facing that.
Now you're getting another city park department.
It goes along with my red light cameras that I want. All right, next up, our police department update. Since Chief Jenkins is not here, Commander O.
Okay.
I'm going to try to butcher your last name. I just shortened it.
Okay, that works for me. Okay, so looks like we're going to civil service soon to start recruitment for a second commander position. We've already kind of set what we're looking for in another commander position, so that meeting is on Wednesday, November 6th. And if all goes as planned, we will have an assessment center for that commander position for the search that'll be held in February. So maybe we'll have somebody hired by April, I think is the timeline that I've heard. As far as police officers go, we're authorized for 33. We have one that just completed field training, and that's Breanna Banks, so she's scheduled to day shift patrol right now. That is our 28th officer. Kayla Nuxall is currently in the academy, and it looks like she went in on August 6th, and she is due to graduate in December 13th, on December 13th, so she's our 29th body. And she's doing great in the academy, so we look forward to her graduating and starting field training. So that leaves us with 4 more to hire. We're currently doing backgrounds on 2 applicants, and one of them is moving along pretty well. We're hoping to start finalizing that. Everything's looking great on both of those backgrounds. Our hire date typically when we get somebody through backgrounds is simply dependent on when we can get somebody into the academy, because there's sometimes 3 to 6 months backlog or a waiting period for when we can get somebody in the academy. And we can't put our name on that list until we have an actual person that's passed backgrounds. So it makes it kind of a slower process for us to get somebody into the academy. So anyway, we have 2 in backgrounds, and we're doing continuing recruitment. We are actually doing our next set of interviews, our oral boards, on December 2nd and December 3rd. And I believe somebody here is involved with that, or will be.
I think Kenitra is going to be on the
Okay.
panel.
So that's December 2nd and December 3rd. And then our records specialists, we are fully staffed. We have 2 currently in training. I think Amanda Nickerson is probably getting close to the end of her training period, and she'll be on her own soon. And then Bridget LaSalle is maybe about halfway through her training. And then all this week, all of our supervisors, myself, the chief, and all of our different experts in use of force, we're attending a use of force training. It's called Transformative Practices for Trainers and Supervisors. And so we're going, it's a 40-hour training block here in Pullman that we're going to, just teaching us about best practices and use of force. So coming up, the chief asked me to see if you guys can't decide on what you want for your next topic at the next meeting. And he had a couple suggestions that he said you guys have talked about in the past, but if you have an idea of what you want to hear next week.
Next month.
Next month, sorry. Next meeting, it says here.
So I'm still trying to get the BDS planning to come out here, but I haven't heard from them, so that might not happen. They are the ones that are in charge of the downtown master plan.
Okay.
And so they are coming to present to the Planning Commission and City Council in February, I think it is. They're coming back out here in December for meetings, and I wanted them to come and present to us, but I haven't heard on when they're actually coming. So I don't know if that's actually going to occur. I'm trying. What were his suggestions?
Red light cameras. But he's actually wanting to wait for some research that, are you doing it with him?
She's almost done with it.
Okay. And WSU PD in cooperation between Pullman Police Department and WSU PD, Cleary and other duties of University Police. And then active shooter civilian training and the police response to those. And then the last one would be bomb recognition and response.
WSU one might work for December because they should be kind of quiet up there by then.
Well, and then also for my other committee that I chair up on campus, they're doing both Pullman and WSU are coming presenting to us. So it would be, they already have their presentation already all set. So that might work out really well. Unless anybody opposes that.
No, that's good.
I think that would be fantastic for December.
Okay.
Maybe we could have some like Christmas goodies or holiday, winter goodies.
Winter cookies.
Yeah, winter cookies.
And that's the update.
Great.
Thank you.
Any questions?
I actually have a question, and it's purely curiosity, but we always hear about, okay, so we hired this person and they're in training and they can't really start. When are they really like getting paid? Because it seems like an awfully long time for them to say, well, you're hired, but you're not really on the job.
Well, so when we identify somebody that we want to hire, we go through the background process, then we will set a date for the academy, or actually they'll tell us when we can have somebody start the academy. So then we'll choose a hire date based on that. So we usually hire about 3 weeks before the academy starts.
Okay.
And from the hire date on, we're paying their salary.
Okay.
And when we send them to the academy, we have to pay about a quarter of the cost for that training, and the state covers the rest of it.
Okay.
So we are paying their salary from the day we hire them, but they're not really functioning on their own and considered a body for us in our staffing until they're all the way on their own.
Okay, but are they...
So off of training.
Okay, but are they present?
Well, they're not...
Are they are they in any way involved while they're waiting to be able to go to the academy?
Are they of any value?
You know,
They're just sitting ducks.
we're not paying them until their hire date, and so we can't tell them what they can or cannot do. So all we do is warn them, be prepared for the academy, and this is how you can prepare yourself.
Okay.
One of the things that within those first 3 weeks, they'll have to go to the academy and pass a physical agility test. So, but we can't make anybody do anything until we're paying them.
Sure.
We can just simply warn them, saying, remember, you have to pass this test.
Yeah.
You better stay in shape.
Okay.
So then we hire them, and then we send them off to the academy. Hopefully they pass the test, and then they go off. So we really don't have really our hands on them until they're graduated from the academy.
Okay.
Until then, they're assigned to the academy.
Right.
They just send us their timesheets once a month. When they graduate, they're all ours, and then we're in charge of training them at that point.
But you can see that the department has, by the time they get somebody through the academy, through field training, there's a huge investment in that position. So you want to make sure that going into it, you're pretty confident they're going to be able to do the job.
Yeah.
And then you hope and pray they want to stay.
Yeah, it's a good 8-9 months or so, probably closer to 9 months, that we're paying their full salary, that they're not considered a staffing option for us. They're not on their own. Yeah, and all their uniforms. So it's a lot of money and a lot of time.
Yeah.
It takes a long time. I mean, if you want to add in all of the recruiting, testing, background process, it takes a year and a half sometimes from the time we say we need to hire somebody until they're actually on the road working for us.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful to know.
Any other questions?
So
Comments?
there's obviously, you're not alone in terms of having vacancies, right? I'm sure almost every department's in the same boat. Yet it seems like the state's not providing enough spots in academies for training. Is there any move afoot at the state level to say we need to expand our law enforcement training opportunities?
Well, it's politics and tax money. I mean, every year, I think this year they tried to get the state to provide more academy classes, like one every 2 weeks going through. And when 940 passed and certain requirements going with that, there was a movement trying to say, well, if you're going to expect all this, provide more training, but then they still didn't. So it's all about money and how much, because the state pays for 75% of the training costs. And I don't know when it was, but just within the last few years or so, they started putting that cost onto the agencies that are sending them. So that's why I say now we have to pay 25%. It used to be covered 100%. So they're trying to offset the cost. They're trying to save money. Spokane, I think, which we like to, they have an academy, we like to send them to Spokane, our people, but they only are authorized to do 2 academies a year. Where over in Burien, they do, I think it might be one every 3 weeks they start. Or at least one a month they start at the academy. But like I said, we've tried to, statewide, there's been a push to try and get the training commission to provide more academies, more classes starting at least every 2 weeks, and some over here in Spokane. But we haven't seen any movement towards that, really. So it's kind of, that's why there's such a huge backlog, is because there are so many agencies that are trying to hire, but then you can't get them trained when you hire them, so it's just a slow process. And I think every agency has their ups and downs, and we got to a point where we were pretty low and we're getting caught up and we're feeling a lot better now. So we'll get there.
I can say that, so on WSU side, we're trying to reinstate the police science degree. So we used to have a police science degree, it went away. And so what we're trying to do with WSU PD is, since they have the cadet program, and so you're like Breanna, there's a lot of great students that go through there, and so what we're trying to propose is allowing and basically certifying people that go through the entire, because they do almost the entire academy in the cadet program. So the goal is if we have someone, so you figure the academy is like 6 months, right? We're arguing that if we can train and educate over a slower period of time, and they have 60 My Body Worn cameras the cadets have, so we get to see what they do, how they do it, complete transparency and accountability, that we could train better officers. It's not that the way we train officers is poor, it's actually really good, but if you want to get new officers, our argument is that if you can train somebody and educate them over 4 years, they're going to be phenomenal officers. So we'll see how all that gains traction, but I think that it bodes well that if you look at the cadets that graduate out of the program now, the WSU's cadet program, they tend to be the top officers in the graduating classes. So we hope that by doing this, we can actually streamline the process and bring in more students, particularly because we know it's struggling to get people to become police officers, but if they can get an education and get training, they can be much better prepared, and so we can streamline that process. You could have 100 officers graduating every year that are post-mobility certified, but that takes not just the politics, but getting CJTC and Sue to be on board to say, yeah, this would make sense to have this at WSU. We got a med school, so I like to argue we should be able to get a police training school. Again, I think 6 months versus 4 years. If we can get someone out there and supervise them and train them, I just think they would be phenomenal officers.
You have to go through faculty senate, and we need peer review research for that first.
So that's why they have my cameras, so pretty exciting. So we'll see.
Any other questions, comments? Great, we're moving on. Constituencies poll, who would like to start?
JSO Kumar, Military Hill, and nothing to report.
No, nothing from College Hill.
Nothing from Sunnyside Hill either.
Nothing on business.
Nothing as a school district parent.
Nothing at WSU.
So Pullman football team has a tiebreaker game tomorrow against Cheney and West Valley, and I think this qualifies them maybe for state or something like that. And then also Pullman Drama Club is putting on their first performance of this year, Emma. It's on the 8th and 9th, so this week, and then also the 15th and 16th.
Nothing yet.
Nothing for me.
We've had lots of clubs start up, and the basketball season for boys is starting up soon, as well as the winter sports unit. And that's pretty much all I have to report.
And nothing from the school district?
Nothing to report from Northern Hill.
Great, I'm so glad our high school students are reporting. Good job. Public comment. Do you have any comment at this time, sir? No. Okay. Anything else from anybody for the good of the order? Our next meeting is December 9th, and we are going to possibly have WC Police and, in conjunction, Pullman Police do a presentation. Wonderful.
Make it happen.
Great. Looking forward to it. All right, well, with that, we're adjourned.